Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first live broadcast of the Make It Big podcast as part of our Make It Big conference. My name is Melissa Dixon. I'm Director of Content Marketing at BigCommerce. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking all about creating unforgettable content experiences, something that is very near and dear to my heart. And we're so excited to have on the show my former colleague and Mailchimp Senior Director of Brand and Studios, Michael Mitchell. Welcome, Michael.
It's really great to be here, Melissa, and really great to see you again. This is exciting.
Awesome. You too. Michael is a true expert when it comes to brand experience and content marketing. Beyond his role at Mailchimp, he has also helped brands like GE, Toyota, AT&T, Heineken, and many, many more stand out and tell their stories all around the world. I had the pleasure of working with Michael at Mailchimp right before I came to BigCommerce, so naturally he came to mind when we decided to host this live podcast all about brand building and content creation. So, Michael, I'm so eager to catch up and hear your perspective on this topic. And I was hoping that before we get started, you could tell the audience a little bit more about your background and just how you've cultivated your love of brand marketing and content.
Sure. That was a really nice introduction. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think I'm a writer by heart. I got a MFA in creative writing in Greenwich Village and had dreams of being sort of the next Toni Morrison or James Baldwin, but I also had dreams of moving out of my parents' house, and those two things can be in conflict with each other sometimes. So figuring out how to still be creative while also sort of building a career drove me towards copywriting and advertising. So got some first early gigs in my career doing that, and that began to evolve into brand strategy, brand messaging, tone of voice, and that evolved into brand experiences and beginning to think in the online and the digital world. And was also fortunate enough to do this at a bunch of agencies, both in the US and overseas. So worked at Wunderman Thompson, Publicis, and Interbrand in New York, Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, and London, and then found myself in my first in-house gig at Mailchimp.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. And I know we talked about this before, but you and I had similar starts too. I had hopes of being a writer and a professor, and then I think fortuitously found marketing. And, I think that's so many of us content marketers too. So I love that we share that. All right. So let's dig into this topic. I wanted to set the stage a little bit for our listeners with some quick data points just about the current state of content marketing. And I was looking at some stats on Statista. So right now, 97% of organizations have a content marketing strategy. That's great. Now, what's interesting about that is that number is up by a whopping 20% since 2019, just a couple years. So it goes to show you the ever increasing importance of content marketing. And in that same vein, content marketing revenue worldwide is also at $49 billion was in 2019 and supposed to hit $76 billion by the end of 2022. So you're looking at a 55% increase in a matter of 3 years. And that's huge. And I think, of course, the main goal, really that content marketing is always looking to reach is creating brand awareness. And that's where I really want to start today. I wanted to talk to you especially about that inextricable link between brand and content. So first real question for you, Michael. If you had to distill into a few words how you would describe the relationship between content and branding, how would you do that? And why are both so important to e-commerce businesses?
Yeah. Well, first off, those numbers are gigantic. I don't think I would have estimated those myself. So it's really interesting to see how fast the content marketing industry is growing and continues to grow. I think sort of drawing the line between the two, there probably isn't a line. They do overlap. It's like there's a a gray area in between where they both influence each other. Brand in general is a shorthand for value. When you see a Nike logo, an Apple logo, Tiffany's color of blue, just those signifiers, those symbols themselves associate themselves with value. And content is an opportunity to back up that symbol and to sort of add credibility to what that symbol represents. Content can either provide context, it can provide depth, it can provide a narrative around what that value is and what the symbol is, and it can also augment the value of the product itself. Content can add education, it can be inspirational, it can be informative, and begin to expand out what that full experience around that brand looks and feels like, and the relationship you build with your customers. And then one more point, it can also have a much longer shelf life than advertising can. Your standard, brand campaign lasts, just as long as the campaign does, whether that's a quarter or shorter. But a good piece of content can be evergreen and really give you much greater return on your investment over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I love that phrase you used, augmenting the brand or augmenting the product. That's a great way to put it. And, I think when we talk about content, it obviously means so many things to so many people, but good content is ultimately about providing truly relevant and useful information to your audience. And, just like I hope we're doing right now. I mean, this entire Make It Big conference is a massive content marketing initiative designed to educate and empower and entice our audience, to make those connections. And it goes beyond the product offering. So from your perspective, what's the difference between content that just kind of checks the boxes and one that really does deliver that rich and meaningful experience? I mean, I know there's a lot of good Mailchimp examples with things that you and your team have worked on. So, what goes into that type of really rich storytelling to set it apart?
So just specifically at Mailchimp, our content just really begins with our customers. Our audiences are small businesses, founders, and entrepreneurs, and we just really strive to have a deep understanding of them, and we feel like we do. We definitely go out into the field to learn more and spend time with them and understand what their pain points are and what problems there are to solve. And sort of solving problems is at the core of the type of content that we create. So Mailchimp Presents, for example, provides the inspiration that small businesses are looking for to sort of augment sort of the educational content that they can find from us or they can find elsewhere. We at Mailchimp kind of see a shared spirit between artists and entrepreneurs. Both of them are just trying to get an idea out there, whether it's a song, a piece of art, a piece of code, whether you just want to start a coffee shop or you want to be the next big tech giant, it's still an idea that a small business or an entrepreneur is trying to get out there. So similarly to what an artist is trying to do. So that's why so many of the podcasts and short form film that we publish on Mailchimp Presents highlight the creative process and are from an artist's point of view. So our latest podcast is called Sonic Symbolism, and it's narrated by Bjork. It is amazing. It's
so cool.
We're a little just sort of awed by it ourselves. It's 9 episodes long, and each episode she walks through each of her 9 albums in anticipation for her 10th album, which is dropping at the end of September. And she speaks in metaphors. Her Icelandic accent is magical. The music that she makes and that she dissects in the podcast is magical. It's a real just amazing sort of experience to listen through that. But people ask us, what's the connection between Bjork and Mailchimp? And again, it goes back to what I mentioned before, that shared spirit of the artist and the entrepreneur just trying to get an idea out there, and you can find inspiration in her creative process to potentially help you with your small business. One more piece that I want to just touch on. We created a digital resource for entrepreneurs of color this last winter as well, called Bloom Season.
Awesome. Yeah.
So that was sort of another opportunity to connect with our customers, understand a problem to solve, and use content to try and help them solve that problem. So there was a dearth of content sort of directed towards the ups and downs, the challenges that are unique to entrepreneurs of color. And there was just a real opportunity for us to fill that void, speak authentically to this audience, provide something that's meaningful and provide value. This was the idea sprung out of the protests in 2020, and we wanted to do something meaningful, more meaningful than just like a black square on our Instagram feed or something like that. So it took 18 months for us to develop Bloom Season, but it's 25 plus articles profiling 50 plus Black and brown entrepreneurs, ranging from a VC fund founder to a coffee shop to Baratunde Thurston wrote a piece for us. A bunch of folks run the gamut, and we offer not only practical, actionable advice for how to run and grow a business, but also a whole section focused on the mental health and wellness issues that one might face as they're beginning to start and grow. So it's a real great example from us in terms of how to solve a problem, understand a key audience, address their concerns, but also do it in an uplifting and inspiring way. So we're really, really proud of that piece of work.
Yeah, one of many great examples that you have. And I think you hit on a couple key points there too, because you brought up the problem solving element, which is critical. We're not doing it for nothing. You're doing it to solve challenges and add value. And then also the authenticity piece is so important. I was talking about this in our session with TikTok yesterday, and that came up. Is just, when you create content, whether it's on TikTok or whether it's this digital publication or whatever it is, the authenticity needs to be there, because that does come through. Consumers are savvy, especially these younger consumers, and they can spot that. So
they can feel a fake brand ad coming from a mile away. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so those are awesome examples. I mean, just the blend of, sort of solving the challenges and being kind of revolutionary, but also being so entertaining and is really great. And so it's interesting too, which is partially why I wanted to talk to you for this episode, is that, Mailchimp itself is such a strong use case for how to do content well, but there's also all of these Mailchimp customers that you have. So on that note, tell me a few about, do you have any examples, maybe notable success stories of merchants that you could share? Because I think our audience might see themselves in some of those examples.
Yeah, 100%. So sometimes I fear when we share examples like the podcast I just mentioned, it can feel overwhelming to a small business. They're like, I can't work with an artist, a musician like York. But so I always like to use examples of folks who sort of tapped into what's authentic to what their small business is. So one example is Dirty Girl Produce. It's a organic family farm in California. So they grow about 20 different varieties of fruits and vegetables. They sell to customers in restaurants and at farmers markets. And they, authentic to who they are and to who their brand is, they've created content in the form of ingredients and recipes. So they've just thought of what makes sense for our brand, what's sort of organic to the type of stuff we're already doing. Recipes should be a great way to both educate our audience, make them more interested in what we're sharing. How can they use all of the organic vegetables and produce that we create? And a cool example is that when they actually expanded their farm from 3 acres to 40 acres, so they had a ton more produce on hand and wanted to really increase their sales. So shameless plug for Mailchimp there, but they used the platform to sort of reshare some of that recipe content, get engaged with their audience again, to re-engage people after they last had a purchase with them. And we're able to use our customer journey builder tool to see a 35% boost in their revenue over time. So a combination of the right content sent at the right time using an automated system that kind of takes some of the work off of their plate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Classic re-engagement automation. Love it. um, well, speaking of shameless plugs, I do have some BigCommerce merchants that I think are doing some really interesting content things as well. One of them also in the food industry, there's this company, I don't know if you've heard of them, it's King Arthur Baking Company. They're based in Vermont, I believe. And
I think so.
they manufacture like flour, baking mixes, other ingredients, but it's really, they have this rich brand story where it really is all about sort of inspiring people to bake and forging this community through baking. So they have all this really cool educational and inspirational content where there's tons of like also recipes, but there's also like baking guides and courses, like live courses, baking classes. There's like a pizza school. So just a lot of really experiential content that goes way beyond the product to kind of empower those customers. I always love when, I think there's a lot in the fashion vertical that brands can do too. There's some of our merchants that I think about as like Ted Baker or Badgley Mishka. Like Badgley Mishka was live streaming their spring 2023 runway show just recently. So, there's just a lot of cool things that merchants across all these different verticals can do. Lots of opportunity to get creative and, get inspired. So check out some of those examples. And on the note of inspiration, who are you currently looking to for content inspiration? Who's inspiring you these days?
Well, you also just remind me, Honen's also a Mailchimp customer, and he creates amazing content.
Oh, good one. Nice.
Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast is just amazing. Listen to that all the time. So
I figured you meant Conan O'Brien, not like Conan Smith.
Yeah, not that, or Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
So both inspirational and a cool example. I think if I'm trying to steal inspiration from like Gen Z, there's a TikTok influencer called Emily Zuge who redesigns famous brand logos in the most lo-fi, sarcastic, hilarious way. If anyone just wants to follow Emily Zuge on TikTok, she's amazing. She's
my Gen Z team, my Gen Zers are nodding in the background.
They're all Yes, I got some cred. Yeah. I got some cred with the Gen Zers. And for fashion, Telfar is also a great young fashion brand that is sort of taking every rule of marketing and turning it on its head or throwing it out the window, and just really breaking all the rules in a really interesting and fun way. So in my attempt to try and remain young and get some credit from the Gen Zers, I'll say Telfar and Emily Zuge, two inspirations there in content.
Those are good answers. Mine are like super nerdy and just like fully embracing my elder millennialism, which I tell anyone who will listen. Mine are like Forbes and Google and those. But no, of course, I always look to the greats too, like Apple and Nike. And I truly always have been such an avid Nike follower and fan. But yeah, okay. So lots of good ones there. It's always interesting to hear who is, inspiring other content marketers and creators. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you, do you have any core principles that you think can keep a content strategy sort of really working toward that goal to be like some of these greats, to establish that human connection? I know with my team, I'm always trying to reinforce like timeliness and relevance and, just tie it back to the overall principle of adding value. But what else do you think is fundamental to a successful content strategy?
Yeah, I think the right mix of types of content. I think there are two or three moments of the year when you probably want to create a larger, higher impact piece of content to raise awareness and reach as many people as you can. It takes a higher level of effort. It takes some more time, some more investment. but hopefully you get the ROI on that larger piece of content, like a conference like this or a podcast like this, to sort of put more effort into something larger, 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And then to augment that, or to sort of help that in the background, you want to also understand what's your always on strategy for content. What are you constantly posting on social? What's your strategy there for keeping customers engaged on a regular basis? What's your calendar look like for that? What are the holidays that are most important to your business? Is it sales season at the end of the year? Is it a certain Valentine's Day holiday or Mother's Day? Like, what are the ones that make sense to you that you're always keeping track of? So finding that balance between the always on and those bigger hero moments is something to sort of keep your eye on, and creating a content calendar is super helpful for that. And then also experimenting and trying new and different things. I think if speaking to authenticity, speaking to just building relationships, I think audiences now more and more are open to seeing you try things, and you just wanting to do your best to attempt to get to know them as best as possible and experiment and have fun. If audiences see you having fun, there's an immediate connection there.
Yeah, could not agree more with all of that, especially the always on component. And that is a key principle that we adhere to with our BigCommerce content strategy. And just, sort of in the name of transparency for the listeners, that is the idea behind the Make It Big programming. It started as a conference. We expanded it to a podcast to be able to constantly put out educational content that our audience, gets all the time, and it'll keep them coming back. So you have these multiple components that make up this always on thought leadership program. And it's, that's the type of stuff that keeps people engaged. So yeah, that's definitely one of the great roles that I adhere to. I was also going to say, for the benefit of the audience, it reminded me of one of my favorite content marketing books. In case anyone is not familiar with Ann Handley, she has a really great book that is called Content Rules, and check it out. If you haven't, we had her at the conference last year, and she's just she's one of the greats. So just wanted to drop that piece. But moving on, Michael, you are in touch with the trends. And I would love to get your perspective on some of the, recent content trends. We've, of course, seen like huge shift in content and channel marketing towards quick hitting video with platforms like TikTok and, of course, Instagram Reels. And now we're seeing a lot more live streaming videos out there. I mean, we've been doing a lot more live streaming also for this conference. So, what are some of the other trends that you're seeing in brand and content marketing heading into 2023 that are sort of shaping your own views, and also maybe your strategy with Mailchimp?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think I don't want to overpromise on being too in on the trends. I just
Yeah.
But I think just connecting back to the experimentation idea we were talking about before, part of experimentation is getting things out there quickly, and being a bit more lo-fi. The low production value videos that you see on some of these platforms kind of equal being authentic, and it also just connects more with the newer audience and the younger audience who's sort of looking for things that don't feel as polished and as sort of well shaped. I think there's honesty and authenticity in sort of lo-fi production. There's sincerity in there, and all of that begins to build closer relationships with audiences, and that can be scary for brands who have been taught over years to sort of perfect and shape and sort of hold all of your brand elements in as perfect shape as possible before it goes out the door, and the opportunity to be a little less precious about everything, be a bit more open to iteration, experimentation, getting things out faster. It's a change in mindset, and it's a change in process for a lot of teams as well.
Yeah. And you touched on this. I think it's interesting, like the sincerity and the empathy. It's not that it's a trend, but I do think there has been this resurgence since the pandemic of that empathetic marketing and people really truly tapping back into that. So I know we've only got a couple of minutes left. I could talk about this stuff all day and, keep you here, but you have other things to do. So I did want to ask you, what is the one key takeaway that you hope our listeners remember from this conversation? What's the one thing that you really want to leave them with?
Yeah, I think it kind of connects back to where we started the conversation, just this idea of putting your audience first, trying to understand them as best as possible and finding a problem to solve for them. Trying to base your creative briefs, base all of your sort of ideas around how are we adding value? How can we make our audience feel seen? How can we solve a problem for them? And also just viewing content as a tool that can help you build relationships. And so thinking about it in that framework allows you to turn it into a two-way conversation with your audiences, treat them as another human on the end of the piece of content, and just sort of opens up the spectrum of being able to more easily find your way into those sincere, authentic relationship building opportunities.
Yep. Human connection. That's what it's all about. Just like we're doing here. I also did want to ask you, are there any exciting projects you want to tell us about that Mailchimp has on the horizon? I heard there was some Fashion Week stuff going on. Tell me about it.
There is some Fashion Week stuff going on. We just completed Fashion Week over the last couple of days. We partnered with the New York Fashion Week itself and the Black in Fashion Council to
awesome.
Give access and a platform to 5 Black emerging designers who wouldn't normally have access to Fashion Week. So we created unique, one-of-a-kind pieces of clothing that we had on display and gave away to everyone who came past our booth, just to help get more of these amazing designers' clothings in people's closets and help raise awareness for their brands and their amazing talent. So it went off really well. We sold out of all of the items that we had on hand, had some celebrities come by our booth. It was very exciting. So again, everyone asks, why does Mailchimp make sense at Fashion Week? And again, it's that shared spirit between artists and entrepreneurs. Designers are small businesses. They're entrepreneurs. They're trying to build a brand and build a name and build a business. And this was our opportunity to try and help them in any way that we could. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, we have at BigCommerce, we have businesses of all sizes. And I think everyone from the small startups to the large enterprises, can sort of take a page out of your book and, learn something about creating that human connection. So thank you so much again for being on this show. It was so great to catch up with you.
This was a lot of fun.
I can't wait to see what you come up with next. So keep in touch.
Really, really great to be here. Great to have this conversation with you, Lisa.
Thanks, Michael. All right. Well, everyone, you were listening to the Make It Big podcast live at Make It Big 2022. Please be sure to share your thoughts with us on social, tag us at BigCommerce. And if you liked what you heard today and want more insights from experts like Michael, be sure to follow our Make It Big podcast to stay up to date with the latest episodes and tune in to the rest of the Make It Big conference this afternoon. Thanks so much for listening.